Good day, teachers, principals, and general manager. My name is Ms. Mai, and I'm going to walk you through the summary of the third habit of highly effective people. Put first things first. Let's start by considering answers to these two questions. Feel free to write your responses down. We will be coming back to your responses later on in the presentation. The first question: what one thing could you do that you aren't doing now that if you did it on a regular basis would make a tremendous positive difference in your personal life? And the second question: what one thing in your business or professional life would bring similar results? Now let us understand that habit 3 is the physical creation, which is the second of the three creations. Habit 3 is the implementation of habits 1 and 2. Therefore, habits 1 and 2 come together in this habit. It occurs on a daily basis, minute by minute. It addresses a lot of the issues that come up when it comes to time management. Let's quickly recall the first two habits previously discussed. Habit 1 says, you are the creator. You are in charge. The first habits emphasize the need of being proactive, pursuing your dreams in life, being accountable for your actions, outcomes, and progress, knowing that you are responsible for your actions. Habit 2 is the first mental creation based on imagination, the ability to envision what you can become. The second habit is to begin with the end in mind. This entails being able to visualize the things you desire in your life. Like a construction that requires a blueprint, you must think about what you want to accomplish. As mentioned previously, both habit 1 and 2 come together in habit 3. So what exactly does habit 3 imply? It involves putting your ideas, vision, and ambition into action. It's time to act now that you've developed a vision and accepted responsibility of your life. The third habit is thought to be the key to fulfillment or happiness. You will attain greatness if you place more emphasis on the things that matter and make it a habit to live a life of value. In other words, we need to be principle-centered. You can't become principle-centered without first being aware of and developing your own proactive nature. You can't become principle-centered without first being aware of your paradigms and understanding how to shift them and align them with principles. You can't become principle-centered without a vision and a focus on the unique contribution that is yours to make. However, you and I can become principle-centered day in and day out, moment by moment, by living habit 3, by practicing effective self-management. We must remember that management is clearly different from leadership. Leadership is predominantly a right brain task that requires a lot of energy. It's more of a work of art than a philosophy. Management, on the other hand, is a dismantling, analysis, sequencing, particular application, and time-bound left brain aspect of effective self-government. As Covey shares his own maxim of personal effectiveness, he states, manage from the left, lead from the right. Let's continue by briefly taking a glance at the fourth human endowment, that of independent will. In addition to self-awareness, imagination, and conscience, it is the fourth human endowment, independent will, that really makes effective self-management possible. It is the ability to make decisions and choices and to act in accordance with them. It is the ability to act rather than to be acted upon, to proactively carry out the programs we have developed through the other three endowments. The human will is an amazing thing, but as we examine this endowment in the context of effective self-management, we realize that empowerment comes from learning how to use this great endowment in the decisions we make every day. Now, the degree to which we develop our independent will in our everyday lives is measured by our personal integrity. Integrity is our ability to make and keep commitments to ourselves, or how we may more relate to the term, it is how good we are able to walk our talk. Does your talk match your walk? Do we have honor in ourselves? Are we practicing this fundamental part of character ethic and essence of proactive growth? Effective management is putting first things first. While leadership decides what first things are, it is management that puts them first, day by day, moment by moment. Management is discipline, carrying it out. Discipline derives from disciple to philosophy, disciple to a set of principles, disciple to a set of values, disciple to an overriding purpose, to a superordinate goal, or a person who represents that goal. To put it in another way, if you're a good manager of yourself, your discipline comes from within. It's a result of your self-control. You are a follower, a disciple of your own fundamental values and the source of those values. And you have the will, the integrity to put those ideals ahead of your feelings, desires, and mood. Do you put your first things first? Putting first things first means doing the most important things in life. It means being clear about your priorities and acting on them. That sounds pretty easy and intuitive, right? But many people fall into the trap of getting caught up in non-important things. They neglect the larger life priorities until it becomes too late to act on them. To become a master of your time, you need to first be aware of your priorities in the larger context of your life. The framework that I will be sharing with you is the time management matrix. It is tremendously useful in helping you achieve that. It will help you structure your daily activities and deal with them based on priorities. The time management matrix is the fourth generation in a series of time management systems developed to give us more control over our lives. Each system builds on the one before it to help us gain greater control of our time. Let us get some insight on the overall improvement of this matrix throughout the generations. The first generation of systems is all about reminders, using notes and to-do lists to remind ourselves of our responsibilities. While they are generally beneficial, they do have drawbacks. Lists do not allow us to plan ahead or to complete the critical activities. This is something that the second generation improves on. It's all about planning and preparation, which means thinking ahead, determining deadlines, and scheduling future events accordingly. Calendars and appointment books are among the tools employed, which makes us tied to a deadline. The drawback is that we become fixated on what's on the calendar. This is addressed in some way in the third generation. It's all about prioritizing, planning, and controlling, which entails defining values and setting goals based on them. Personal organizers and electronic or paper-based planners are among the tools employed. As teachers, some, if not most of us, have a teacher planner that we employ as a way of being organized and managed. However, fundamental values like relationships, spirituality, and inner serenity are not considered by the system, which are more significant in the long run. This is addressed by the fourth generation system, also known as the Eisenhower matrix. It allows us to concentrate on selecting and completing higher value tasks. This is accomplished by first classifying our everyday activities by urgency or importance on the time management matrix, and then dealing with them according to the quadrant in which they fall. In other words, each activity of each day can be broken down into urgency and importance. Let's take a moment to clarify the difference between these two factors. The term urgent refers to a situation that requires prompt response. For example, a phone ringing. Most people cannot stand the thought of allowing the phone to just ring and not answer. On the other hand, important things have to do with outcomes. It supports our mission, beliefs, and high priority objectives. Take into consideration the following scenarios. Imagine that for weeks you have been preparing for an important meeting with management. You prepared material, got dressed up, and traveled to the person's office. You begin the discussion of the issue and then someone's phone rings. The phone call would generally take precedence over your personal visit. The call was urgent but not important like the person who is present. People who put first things first focus on the important, not just the urgent. Act on priorities, plan weekly, and act daily. You are putting first things first when you organize your time around the most important things and eliminate the unimportant. Let's take a closer look at each quadrant of the time management matrix. Quadrant 1, urgent and important. Your crises or emergencies will be found here because of its importance and urgency. Quadrant 1 shouts for our attention. Many others, on the other hand, fall into the trap of being caught up in Quadrant 1. We become distracted with firefighting every day instead of disaster prevention by spending all of our time here. Quadrant 3, urgent but not important. Some people waste a lot of time on Quadrant 3 duties and mix them up with Quadrant 1 tasks. They consider the chores to be crucial when they are not. For example, you may be devoting a significant amount of time to a report that has little bearing on your overall job performance or appraisal. This is why Quadrant 3 is known as a quadrant of deception. The urgency of these duties is frequently caused by others' priorities and requirements. Quadrant 4, not urgent or important. This area is known as a quadrant of waste for a reason. It houses all of our time wasters. People who live unconsciously tend to gravitate towards Quadrant 3 and 4. They go into autopilot mode after completing their Quadrant 3 responsibilities and spend all their time in Quadrant 4. This could be due to a lack of alternatives or procrastination on tasks that should be completed. Quadrant 2, not urgent but important. The magic quadrant we need to concentrate on is Quadrant 2. It's the most crucial quadrant, but it's also the one that gets overlooked the most. Quadrant 2 is all about taking charge of your own destiny and focusing on the most crucial responsibilities. Your life objectives and desires, which are tied to your life's purpose, are reflected in Quadrant 2 chores. Quadrant 2 tasks are frequently overlooked for two reasons. To begin with, Quadrant 2 duties are never urgent, and because they are not urgent, we do not do them. Taking care of your health, for example, or pursuing your aspirations. Secondly, compared to other quadrants, these tasks require more investment of energy and time to see results, which conflicts with modern society's obsession with instant results. In the long run, however, Quadrant 2 duties are the most rewarding. Consider it like sowing seeds for a future harvest. Imagine yourself as a waitress who aspires to be a literature teacher, which is a Quadrant 2 task. You begin studying for a degree in literature while working as a waitress. You also take on the role of a teacher. While it will take a few years for things to be completed, you have started the process. You know it'll only be a matter of time before you reap the benefits of your labor, becoming a full-fledged teacher. Consider an example if we neglect a Quadrant 2 task. Imagine yourself having a stomachache. More than likely, we would ignore it and say it was hunger or I ate late. And even though we continue to feel these aches, we ignore them or come up with what we might think as a reasonable explanation for them. It is not until weeks or months after having continuous aches that we decide to visit a doctor for medical advice, when at that point it might be too late or our health has deteriorated drastically. After you've planted your seeds, you'll need to keep watering and caring for them. However, it will only be a matter of time before you reap the benefits of your hard work. On the other hand, if you continue to put off these Quadrant 2 chores, nothing will change, whether it's in 5, 10, or 20 years. Putting your attention on Quadrant 2 can help you develop vision, perspective, balance, and control. Now let's look again at the nature of the questions asked at the beginning of the session. What one thing could you do in your personal and professional life that if you did it on a regular basis would make a tremendous positive difference in your life? Think about the activity you have chosen. Think carefully if the activity you have chosen actually would make a difference. Quadrant 2 activities have that kind of impact. Our effectiveness takes quantum leaps when we do them. If Quadrant 2 activities are clearly the heart of effective personal management, the first things we need to put first, then how do we organize and execute around those things? The only place to get time for Quadrant 2 in the beginning is from Quadrant 3 and 4. You have to be proactive to work on Quadrant 2 because Quadrant 1 and 3 work on you. To say yes to important Quadrant 2 priorities, you have to learn to say no to other activities, sometimes apparently urgent things. The objective of Quadrant 2 management is to manage our lives effectively. A Quadrant 2 organizer will need to meet 6 important criteria for it to be an eligible tool to use. Your tools need to possess coherence, which suggests that there is harmony, unity, and integrity between your vision and mission. Your tool must demonstrate balance in your life by identifying your various roles and keep them in front of you, but do not neglect other important areas of your life. You need a tool that encourages you and motivates you to keep spending time in Quadrant 2. You need a tool that has a people dimension, meaning that it deals with people, not just schedules. A flexible tool implies your tool should be your servant, never your master. Your planning tool should also be portable so that you can carry it with you most of the time. So what are we trying to understand? Work first, then play. Which simply means to spend my time on things that are most important. This means you say no to things you know you should not do. You set priorities, you make a schedule, and follow your plan. You are disciplined and organized. For a few months, try using the time management matrix and see how it works for you. Consider which quadrants you are in the next time you perform something. Is it Quadrant 1, Quadrant 2, Quadrant 3, or Quadrant 4? Are you taking the appropriate steps for such a task? What are the Quadrant 2 chores in your life that you are ignoring? Begin working on them today, and you will reap the benefits of your labor in due time. Let's consider this computer metaphor. Habit 1 says, you're the programmer. And habit 2 says, write the program. Then habit 3 says, run the program.